This is me before reading Sunrise and the Reaping. This is me. This is me. I'm not ready. I'm not.
You better watch out. You better watch out. You better watch out. You better watch.
I remember being on Tumblr in like 2013 and people saying that we need a Haymitch prequel. And I never thought we were gonna get one. I was like, yeah, right. Like she's never gonna write that. I'm holding it in my hands right now. You know, the funny thing is I don't derive enjoyment from reading the Hunger Games series. Like occasionally I do. And when I say that, not that I mean I don't love it, because I love it so much, but it's like, it's very difficult to read. And I think it's a little too real, especially given the state of affairs out there. All right, let's go. I'm doing a combination, by the way, of like, I've got the audiobook on my phone and I've also got the physical book, and I'm just kind of like, I'm doing both because I want to experience it in all aspects. See, right from the start, why does she have to make Haymitch born on Reaping Day? Okay, let's just give him a terrible day to start off with. Let's make me sad from the jump. Why don't you, Suzanne? Folks, we are 2 pages into the book. We just got introduced to Haymitch's family, and Haymitch is like, has this precious little brother that almost reminds me of Prim, and then we know what's gonna happen to Haymitch's family, and you know, so it's like you see that tragedy barreling toward you, and I'm like, Haymitch, no!
Don't make unnecessary journeys. Don't take risks on treacherous roads, and don't swim in the sea.
Want to hear something? Burdick asked as we ventured deep into the woods. He tilted back his head and sang out in that remarkable voice of his. High and sweet, like a grown-up woman's, but cleaner, nothing warbly about it. Everything seemed to go still, and then the mockingjays began to pick it up. I knew they'd sing for other birds, but I'd never heard them sing for a person before.
Wait.
She wasn't one of Burdick's Aberdeen cousins, but I knew we had some distant ones on Sma's side.
All right, confirmation. That's what I mean when they did with the mockingjays. I was like, but then okay, confirmation. So Haymitch was friends with Katniss's dad. That kind of changes everything for me, because like, oh my god. Because I feel like I know more so in the movie Haymitch was kind of like a father figure to Katniss, but he also, I mean, he was in the books. Just a little bit of like a, what's the word? Dysfunctional. Like your, dysfunctional father figure, more like your drunk uncle at times. But like, so knowing that he had that connection, and also this is confirmation. I know people speculated this, but this is also confirmation that Katniss's dad was Distant Covey, which is what people are saying because he had that singing voice.
But she showed up one night in the seam, alone, to treat a neighbor woman who'd been whipped for back-talking a peacekeeper. She brought some ointment she'd concocted herself, and slipped away, never mentioning payment.
So here we go, confirmation that Haymitch also was not perhaps friends with, but knew Katniss's mom, and also had respect for her for being in the rich merchant class and going out of her way to help people that needed her help, and doing it for free, and giving up her resources to help others. Whatever this Drusilla, this the Effie before Effie is really making me appreciate Effie, because Effie might have been a little bit, I don't know what the word is, like ditzy at first, like a little bit unconcerned with politics and with what's going on around her. She was never malicious. She never, actively, maliciously degraded the District 12 people. Like there was the comment here and there that she made about like, oh, they didn't know how to use silverware. But again, that came off as more ignorant than actually a desire to cause harm, which is to me 2 different things. And so appreciate Effie, because This lady's insane. Before I continue to be emotionally destroyed, let's talk comfy reading outfits. So unfortunately, I'm someone who's easily distracted. If something on my body is like bothering me, I will get pulled out of the book, and I hate when that happens. So I need to be fully comfy when I'm reading, and what I've fallen in love with is Parade, who is sponsoring today's video. I'm genuinely so happy that I discovered them because they make the most comfortable undergarments I've ever worn in my life. So this is the one I'm wearing right now. As you can see, it's like super stretchy, it's incredibly soft, and it's like seamless, so it's so comfortable. Hopefully this isn't TMI, but I have a deformed sternum bone. So it is extremely difficult for me to find anything that's comfortable, and this, it's like I can't even feel that I'm wearing it. What I also love is they have fun colors. Like, I don't care if no one can see it, I wanna have fun. This was the other favorite I bought, and as you can see, like the one I'm wearing, it's like extremely soft and stretchy. I mean, listen, I don't have a lot going on upstairs, and by upstairs, I don't mean my brain. It's very hard for me to find something that fits, and they have such a wide range of sizes and styles. I highly recommend. If you want your own comfy reading outfit, you can use my discount code MAGIC30 for 30% off site-wide and fall in love with Parade like I did. Woodbine Chance. Huh? I'm not that good at math, but I think we're at 4 tributes, and Haymitch's name was not called. What has happened? What's going to happen? I'm afraid. Oh God, oh my God, oh God. Why does she have to make it more tragic? Why? Because it's like, it was already tragic when Haymitch's name was called, but now, oh! So Woodbine made a run for it. He got shot. Haymitch's girl, Lenore Dove, was trying to like fight with the peacekeeper, and he stepped in to help her, and then they said, well, you're our new tribute now, which again, infinitely more tragic because it didn't have to be him. To me, I think that is really well connected to what Suzanne Collins said that this book was going to be about. She said that she was thinking about implicit submission when she wrote this book. And, you know, if you go to the quote at the beginning, that the sun will not rise tomorrow is no less intelligible a proposition and implies no more contradiction than the affirmation that it will rise. So for me to be looking at it and saying, like, you know, his name getting pulled, well, there's nothing he could have done about it. That's just the way it is. That's just the government system. But like him fighting the peacekeeper, that could have prevented his fate. I think it's sort of, I'm sort of echoing this question that Suzanne Collins is asking is, why do we have this sense of implicit submission where we assume just because things are the way that they are, that they will be like that tomorrow? And I think the fact that I would be more emotionally okay with Haymitch's name getting pulled versus the scenario which he did end up in the games is a reflection on me buying into that idea that, well, if that's just how the system is, there was nothing we could have done about it, which I think is interesting. Well, we got a may the odds be ever in your favor, but it is certainly much less of a fun little line coming from Drusilla. F you, Drusilla. So I talked about it for 40 minutes in the other video, so I won't go too much into it, but it's really this idea that the Hunger Games presents us, that the odds are never in our favor. They set up this system where they make us feel like we can have a chance to live, to succeed, to do whatever, and that's not the truth. The truth is that the odds, especially for people at the bottom of that system, the odds are never going to be in their favor. As long as the people in the top can trick you into thinking that, well, you know, maybe someday the odds will be in my favor, they can keep their power. So it's a great line. So in my head, I'm like, oh, Plutarch, is that like Plutarch's dad? But then I realized, no, this isn't, that Haymitch isn't that old, right? So this is the Plutarch from the original series. So we're kind of seeing who he was back then. And it's really, really interesting because now we're going to find out what his and Haymitch's relationship was that made Haymitch trust him in the rebellion. Oh no. Oh my God. Haymitch saying bye to his little brother. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. So Haymitch calling Louella sweetheart in an endearing way, because when she was like a little kid, she told everyone that Haymitch was her sweetheart, and he found that so like adorable in a little sister way. And he says, if I had a little sister her age, I'd want her to be just like Louella. And so knowing that he originally used the term sweetheart as an endearing term for this girl who is like his little sister, and then when we know that's what he ended up calling Katniss, knowing that the origin of the nickname was one that was said out of love and endearment. I don't think I can handle this. I don't think I'm emotionally stable enough for this, you know? I will be sending Suzanne Collins my therapy bills and swords. I'm embracing that when I realize the blood isn't mine, that fate isn't mine, and the tribute who's escaped the arena is Louella. Oh! Just give me a second to die. The thing that Suzanne Collins is really good at doing is shocking you in a way that's good storytelling. I think some authors, TV writers put things in, shock in for the sake of shock value, whereas every time you get a shocking moment in the Hunger Games books, you see exactly how of value it is to the story. So Haymitch has taken her body and carried her all the way in front of Snow, which is, yeah, up Haymitch. Oh! 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 Soft footfalls approach and a small young woman appears. I recognize her immediately. The black-haired girl from District 3 who won last year's Hunger Games. Hello, I'm Wyrus, one of your mentors.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh.
No, Suzanne! Oh! Oh! I need a sedative. A second woman arrives. It takes a moment to place her. It's Mags, a victor from District 4. So, can you imagine what it was like for Haymitch in Catching Fire and him having to watch both of them die in those games? Also, knowing that Katniss went to the training room and came back and said, I only want Wyrus and BEETEE and Mags. I wonder what Haymitch was thinking then. Like, I wonder what he...
I'm just like you. I'm just like you. You're just like me. You're just like me.
By the way, this is only how far I've gotten. And I'm already not... God! I mean, what? Oh my God. Like, what else is gonna happen?
Alright, let's tell each other a secret about ourselves. I'm gonna go first. I hate you.
So I woke up in the middle of the night last night and was like, Clerk Carmine, because I just remembered he's from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. If you remember when I read Percy Jackson for the first time, I don't remember characters' names. I was like, Rachel, who's Rachel? So it just, now I'm wondering, trying to work out the Covey family tree. Is Lenore the daughter of Maud Ivory? Let me know your thoughts on the Covey family tree, because I'm still trying to work it out in my head. But also, I'm really mad that the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes that I got doesn't match the spine of my other 3 Hunger Games books. That's gonna mess my bookshelf up.
Both men and women and non-binary people of all gender appropriations and the pronouns, everyone is included.
Oh! That was, no, first line in. Yeah, okay. Louella is dead, and I was supposed to look out for her, and I didn't. And while Lenore Dove will forever be my true love, Louella is my one and only sweetheart. When you originally read The Hunger Games, it kind of feels like Katniss is one of the first to rebel. But looking back, we really see how, over the years, the tributes all, in their own ways, have been rebelling, and Katniss wasn't the first one to do something. And I think that's important to show that, you know, the rebellion didn't start with Katniss. The more I think it over, the more my dismay grows. Every year we let them herd us into their killing machine. We could have at least done some damage. At least a little, possibly a considerable amount, someone says behind me. I turn to see Plutarch. He waves his camera crew over to record the knife training, but his attention stays on me. The question is, why didn't you? So I didn't want any spoilers on this book, but I did want to look up what Suzanne Collins wanted to say when she wrote this book, because we know with every book, Suzanne Collins has something that she's specifically saying. And in the original Hunger Games, if you saw my 40-minute long video where I talked about this. It was about just war theory and what actions within a war are just. In Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, it was the state of nature debate and how people's worldviews and what they think the natural state of humanity is lead to their ideas on how people should be governed. Sunrise on the Reaping, she said, was about implicit submission. And now I think we're really getting into that theme with Plutarch asking, you know, why do the districts accept the system as it is? And I think it's a really relevant question when it comes to not just the state of America, but lots of different governments worldwide. Why do we implicitly submit? The quote at the beginning of the book argues that we submit based on opinion alone. So it is the propaganda that we're given by our governments that tell us that this is the way things have to be. I think there's a lot within our own society that we accept based on opinion. When I say we, I don't mean like you personally or me personally, but just like citizens as a whole accept, like that, you know, yeah, there's going to be homeless people, but that's how it has to be because that's the economic system we have, and this is the economic system that we've always had that is the best one. And there is, you know, people are not going to have good healthcare, and maybe they're going to die, and some people will have access to better healthcare and they'll live, and that's just the way the system is. Or no, we have to work 8 hours a day because that's just how it has to be. And I do think that, you know, a lot of us like Haymitch, we see that, no, this is wrong. And then it's the question Plutarch's asking, well, if we see it's wrong, why do we keep submitting? And then Haymitch goes on to think about the fact that they have these advanced weapons, but the people of the districts vastly outnumber the people of the capital. And it's interesting to think about because, like I said, I think with the spread of information we have now with the internet, there's a lot more that we're starting to see about our society that would have been accepted before as just like, that's how the system is. That's the way it is, and that's the best we have it, and that's the way it has to be. Oh, that's where my Mockingjay pin went. It was on my pin board. I thought I lost it. No, I just put it on my pin board. I'm so stupid. I wanted to put it on for the video, and that's okay. Anyway. I don't even remember what I was saying. So we are starting to question like Haymitch, but I think there's so much, you know, we've honestly as a society, I think we barely scratched the surface of questioning why things are the way they are. And I think there's a lot of propaganda that is keeping us implicitly submitting to these systems that are not ideal for the majority of people. As he turns, I note the pair. I can't even read, okay? Oh my God. As he turns, I note the pair of steel-rimmed glasses. While he bears a strong resemblance to Ampert, this is not why he looks familiar. It's BEETEE, a victor from District 3. Suzanne! So, lots going on here. Give me a second. So, while Suzanne Collins was tearing my heart out of my chest, we also learned a lot here, which was that BEETEE was part of a plot to try to destroy the capital's communication systems. And he is being punished by not only his child being sent to the games, but him having to act as a mentor to his own child, knowing full well that the capital will never let his child live. Which, you know, I guess I never thought about it. We know in the original series, there was already a rebellion in progress that Katniss didn't know about. So it's really interesting to see that they are plotting to break the arena, which they were able to finally do in Catching Fire this far back. And I think it's really interesting because this book is about propaganda. And we see how effectively that the propaganda has worked, because in the original trilogy, we as readers wouldn't have known that there had been ongoing rebellious acts all the way back in Haymitch's time. I just think it's kind of meta that the propaganda is so effective that even us as readers didn't know the truth. But I also think she's saying something really interesting here about how many times you need to try and how long you need to be fighting for before a rebellion might be successful. But anyway, so Plutarch has a library. And I think I think that's really essential. And I think it's really essential that the books in his library are the same stories that Lenore and the Covey know. It's really giving us insight as to why Plutarch specifically ended up being involved in the rebellion. Because Plutarch, I think, understands propaganda. He has a better understanding of propaganda than the average person because he is the one creating the propaganda. But just because he can see through propaganda, what is his motivation to join the rebellion? And I think reading this part where it's talking about his access to a library and therefore a wider education than most would get, especially when it comes to history, I think Plutarch is one of the few people that has the education to see that the system has not always been the way it is and that it has been changed and it can be changed. And I think that is a very good lie to keep people in control, is that the way it is the way it's always been and you can't change it. Plutarch knows it can be changed because he has that access to history, but so do the Covey because they have oral history through their songs. They pass down these stories. And I think that explains a lot about why Lenore had more of these rebellious thoughts we see her having in the beginning than someone like Haymitch did, because she has access to history. Sorry, I know this is like an objectively scary situation Haymitch is in, but the president asking like, hey, can I get some milk? And Haymitch being like, yeah, sure. Oh, it's empty. It's really...
You.
Also, Snow still being salty over Lucy Gray. Like, how many years has it been? You're a grown man now, okay? You need to move on, bro. What? Huh? What? Huh? What? Huh? Standing in the doorway is Louella McCoy. Louella, girl, what? What are you doing here? What? Oh, it's not Louella. Okay, yeah, just punch me in the face twice, why don't you? Just throw me in the ground and kick me and keep kicking me, and then I'm like, please, no more, you're gonna keep kicking me. These books are horrifying.
Oh, hi, thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
Wow, okay. So there is now more like a full-scale plan in place to flood the arena. So there's definitely more to Haymitch's games. Effie! Girl, what are you doing here? Okay. Wow. I did not expect Effie to make an appearance in this book. Now looking at it, I think it makes total sense why Effie would be here. Every single appearance that Suzanne Collins has put in has served a purpose. So I was like, there's got to be a point that why Effie's here. She's not just throwing in characters, okay? Suzanne Collins doesn't live to serve the fans. She lives to crush the fans. So just for the sake of the plot, I think it makes sense that Effie and Haymitch would meet at this time because, you know, Haymitch doesn't like a lot of people when we meet him in the original trilogy. I keep pointing, my books are up there, that's why I keep pointing that way. But he seems to some extent like Effie, and I guess the question is why? And I think that's answered here is that Effie was the only capital citizen, I guess besides Plutarch, who treated Haymitch with dignity and respect. Because you have Drusilla, who is completely dehumanizing him. You have the academy students that they could not care whether he's dying or not. They only care about themselves. But you have Effie, who is a capital citizen that treated him like a human being. And I think that's important that had to happen now while Haymitch is at his lowest in this society. He's a District 12 tribute. He's a tribute from the poorest district. He doesn't have any chance of surviving. And Effie still treats him with respect and dignity. Because if they had met like later in life when Haymitch was a victor and Effie treated him respectfully, I don't think that would have meant much to Haymitch. We know that the capital citizens love parading around their victors. I don't think he would have seen any sort of value in that treatment. So I think his respect for Effie had to come all the way back from here when Effie had no benefit to treating him with respect, and she still did. So just for plot reasons, I think they had to meet here. They had to meet in this story. But for thematic, I guess you would call it reasons, I think it's really interesting. We're introduced to a few different types of capital citizens in this book. I think on the one end of like the worst end of the spectrum, you have Drusilla, who from her experiences of the war has completely dehumanized the districts. And then you have the academy students who they don't know there's a system. They haven't even questioned whether a system exists.
People are gonna die. It's just terrible, but like, inevitable?
But then you have Effie, who sees the cruelty that Haymitch and the other tributes are subjected to, and she knows it's cruel. She knows that it's not right what they have to go through. And she doesn't have any of her own experiences of the war. She has only learned about the necessity of the games through propaganda. It really shows how someone can be so completely blinded by the propaganda they're being served that they can see why something's wrong, yet not see it at all. It had to be Effie because it had to be someone that we know and that we love. Because if it was just a random stylist, we would be like, oh yeah, if it's, whatever, they're capital, they're bad, they're dumb. But when it's Effie, you have to stop and think, because we like Effie. We know Effie, and we know that Effie's not a bad person. And because we have this connection to her, it makes us stop and think and say, is there something in my life? Is there something in my society? Are there many things in my society that I am blind to because of propaganda? Maybe it's propaganda I don't even know about. And it's the same reason it had to be Prim that died and not any other child, because once it's someone you have that emotional connection to, you can't write it off. I think we could have easily written off these questions if it was any other capital member, because we don't have a connection to them. We don't have empathy for them. We don't see ourselves in them at all. But once it's Effie, that's someone you can't write off. And so you have to ask yourself those questions. So I think, like I said, Effie served a very important role in this story, and only one that she could fill. And I really appreciate this book for not just putting in appearances. I think a lot of sequels and prequels sometimes will just throw in characters because they feel otherwise the story can't stand on their own. And it's kind of like a cheap way to keep audiences invested. But that's not what this book is doing at all. Every single person who's been in this book, who we already know and love, has served an important purpose to the story or makes exact sense in the plot to be there. Actually, most of them have done both. They make sense within the plot and they serve an important purpose. So
I'll bring the girls, you bring the beer, and the troops will bring the freedom.
I think what's really interesting about the interviews is that it's going back to the idea of this sort of meta propaganda that exists within this book. Because how Katniss and Peeta, and subsequently the readers, saw Haymitch in his interviews in Catching Fire is very different than who he is in this book. And that's because that's how Haymitch has chosen to brand himself in the interviews, as the sort of like snarky, sarcastic, I don't care about anyone but myself. I think Katniss even says when she's watching, like, well, he didn't have to reach too far for that character, which is completely different to how we see it in this book, which is that this is completely a new character that he invented. This was actually nothing like who Haymitch was back then. And so I think just getting this idea of real or not real in a meta sort of sense, where we as readers are now learning that Haymitch that we saw in Catching Fire was not real.
Where are all the hot people? I was told that there would be all these attractive singles, and as far as I can tell, I'm the best looking person here.
Drusilla stands at the back of the van. All right, you lot, she says. Try not to embarrass me. Maysilee rallies one last time, as if you needed our help. R.I.P. Maysilee, you would have loved Joanna Mason. All right, we're starting the games now. I wonder how Wyatt died, and immediately feel certain he was protecting Lulu the way no one had ever protected him. So I've gotten to where Lulu has caught up to Haymitch in the arena, and he's sort of taken care of her. It sort of reminds me about how when Katniss found Peeta in the arena, and Peeta, like Lulu, was not going to help Katniss survive. He was injured. He was, someone that needed her to share her food with him. Like, in terms of Haymitch's and Katniss's physical survival, taking care of Lulu and taking care of Peeta was not going to help them win the games, yet they chose to anyway. And like I said in my other Hunger Games video, I really like what Suzanne Collins is saying about how, though it may not seem like it, kindness and compassion is a survival skill. Kindness and compassion is how we as humans survive. And I just love that that is a quality we're seeing in Haymitch as well. There's nothing I can do but watch helpless again, just as I was to save Louella. For a moment, the two merged, Lulu and Louella. She's just one pigtailed kid I've known her whole life, and I would do anything to spare her this. I don't know. Don't go find Ampert. So Haymitch is going to find Ampert, and this is like why I said I don't like prequels, because we know what's going to happen. We know that they don't. I mean, no, I don't know if they break the arena, but it was never shown in the games. We know that it for largely wasn't a success. We know Ampert didn't make it out alive, and it's just I'm filled with dread because I know what's going to happen, and I know I think I've seen this film before, and I didn't like the ending. All the little ones seem to end up with me. Louella, Lulu, Ampert. I can't keep one of them safe. Why do they flock to me? I don't know what I thought. I thought that Ampert would get some sort of death like Rue, where it's sad, but there's still some humanity in it. And that imagery of just the skeleton is so shocking and horrifying. I feel like this book, that perhaps she made a deliberate choice or had more free reign to really be completely real about the horrors of what the people in this universe are facing. And it's not at all sort of given in a way that is more digestible. And I think, and like I said, Suzanne Collins never puts anything in her book that is just there for shock value. It has to be this horrifying because you have to continually ask yourself, when it comes to the theme of implicit submission, of propaganda, you have to continue to ask yourself more and more, why are people putting up with this? What can be done about this? What are people in the Capitol looking away from and not seeing? They hang the man and flog the woman who steals the goose from the common, yet let the greater villain loose that steals the common from the goose. So I thought this was an incredible poem. I looked it up, and this was one like, The Raven, obviously, that Suzanne Collins included in her book but didn't write, and it was published in 1821. And it's really interesting how this many years later it is still very, very applicable. I have failed. The arena has been damaged, but not incapacitated. The games continue. So I have another video of me reading a series of unfortunate events for the first time. And I say in that video, I don't like reading it because it fills me with dread, because the characters continue to try so hard, and they continue to be so good and to try to fight for their lives, and they are never rewarded. But as I say in that video, I think that's an important story to tell, because what Lemony Snicket, or the author Daniel Handler, is saying about those stories is he said, with the series of unfortunate events, he was writing about the notion that terrible things can happen at any reason, and they're not punishments for bad behavior, just as good things happening are not rewards for good behavior. In a classical story, Haymitch would defeat Snow on the first try, and he would be able to break the arena, and they would win, and the games would end. That's not the truth in real life. In real life, more often than not, you fail. You're not able to overcome the system, and there is a lot of sacrifice and misfortune. But I think that's important to show that after the failure, the rebellion continued, and they kept going and kept trying until they eventually did succeed. You and me, you remember what Ampert said when you made him his token? There's a long pause before she says, "Sure, I'll be your sister." Well, I'm back for more getting punched through the ground and kicked, and then I try to get up, and then I get kicked again. It's really interesting learning now that Haymitch was trying to find the edge of the arena so he could complete his task of breaking the arena. But I think it's clear that the basic plot of the story and Haymitch's backstory that she had already thought of when she read Catching Fire, but that was not shared with the audience, and we're learning it now, and I think that's really cool. Also, knowing that the Mockingjay pin belonged to Maysilee, and now we see how important Maysilee was to Haymitch, it just adds, again, this is the sort of story that really, I feel like some prequels, they're great, but it's just kind of like, this is the backstory of what happened, and they're not necessarily adding anything to the story at large. This is a prequel that really not only adds to the story at large, but completely changes your perspective. Once you read this, you will read the original trilogy in a whole different way. And I think that is a really clever and a really, really great thing for a story to do. So it's really interesting that this bit with like the porcupines and Haymitch and Maysilee like trying to save their fellow tributes, as far as we know, was not shown in the tape. And I think that is just, again, very in line with the theme of propaganda and how the Capitol will edit the footage to try to discourage anything that shows unity between different districts. Because as we know, the people in power can sow division under the people beneath them. That will stop the people beneath them from uniting. Like Haymitch says, there's more of us than there is of them. But if the people in power can stop, the greater majority from uniting, then they can remain in power, even though they are fewer in number. Okay, this is really unexpected. So Maysilee and Haymitch have just run into a pair of game makers that are in the arena, fixing the arena. Wow, so they were just able to kill a couple game makers. And Suzanne Collins, I think, did a really great job of like sort of pulling back the curtain on the arena and subsequently like kind of pulling back the curtain on this system. Also really interesting is the reaction of the District 4 tribute to them killing of the game makers. She says, "What did you do? Did you kill game makers? They'll never let us win now." And Maysilee says, "Still chasing that sad little dream." And this is one of the themes that I thought was really well done in the original Hunger Games series, was looking at the way that the people in power are able to maintain their power because they're able to trick the masses into believing that the odds will be in their favor, that if they just do what the Capitol says, if they cozy up to the Capitol, then maybe someday they can become like the people in the Capitol. As long as they believe in this system, there are people who are doing worse off than them, then they believe it's more in their benefit to side with the Capitol than with the districts, because they're promised this, what Maysilee calls a sad little dream, that if they support the Capitol, then they will be afforded more luxuries like the Capitol have. So it's this simultaneous thing of they want to be like the Capitol and they don't want to be like the people they see the Capitol oppressing more. And that's how the Capitol propaganda works on them. And that's how the Capitol is able to split up the districts and prevent unity. Just like how in the rebellion, District 2 sided with the Capitol because they fell for the idea that they have more to gain by siding with their oppressors than they do with their fellow people who are oppressed, simply because the Capitol has set up this system where some people have more benefits than others. And this mimics a lot of societies and governments in modern day, where you divide the people below you and some get afforded more privileges than others. And as long as you do that, the people that are afforded more privileges think they someday have a chance of being at the top, even though that's not true. Silka does not want to rebel against the Capitol because she wants to win the games. But as we know, there are no winning the Hunger Games. It parallels very closely our economic systems, where the majority of people are much closer to being homeless, to being in poverty, than they are to being in the top 1%. But they've been tricked into this idea of believing that, well, maybe someday I can be that rich. So they support systems that don't benefit them and that benefit the wealthy because they've been tricked into believing, well, that could be me. Now back to this idea of implicit submission. Haymitch hesitated before killing the game maker, and he's asking himself, why didn't he? I think of the moment with the knives and training of the country as a whole and how we just keep submitting to the Capitol's rule. Why? The Hunger Games, like I said, is very good at doing what great stories do, ask you questions rather than give you answers. Because we're not getting an answer here. Haymitch is asking himself, why didn't he? And, he comes to different conclusions earlier in the book. He's like, well, they have weapons, but we outnumber them. But why did I hesitate? Is it just like, am I submitting? Am I not? And so by not having Haymitch answer the question of why he's implicitly submitting, it makes you as readers have to ask yourself the question and have to try to think about the question for yourself, which I think is a great way to write a book. And I cannot say this enough. Again, very meta. Suzanne Collins didn't just write a book about propaganda where we read it and the characters are getting tricked by propaganda. She wrote a book where us as readers have to reassess our perspective and our assumptions and make us think about the propaganda we received as readers from the Capitol. And that is so mind-blowing and so interesting, and what a story. Wait, Maysilee's about to die, isn't she? Oh, wait. I'm gonna need like a cry tally for this video. Goodbye, Maysilee Donner, who I loathed and then grudgingly respected, then loved, not as a sweetheart or even a friend. A sister, I'd said. But what is that exactly? I think about our journey. Everything from sniping with her in those early days after the reaping to battling those pink birds. I guess that's my answer. A sister is someone you fight with and fight for tooth and nail. Silka stands like a statue, her snot green outfit splattered in bright red. In her right hand, her axe. Her left holds Wellie's head, the tiny knife in her bird claw, dove-colored feathers, headless baby chick. Again, just like Ampert, this book feels a lot more horrifying and shocking in its imagery. And like I said, really important to have that shocking imagery because we need to be questioning if the horrors that the districts are going through are that unfathomable, then why do they implicitly submit? So it's necessary imagery, but I don't think I'll be able to read this book again, honestly. It's one of the best books I've ever read, but it's really, really hard to read.
Please, God, just let me have one good day. Oh my God, you again? Give it a rest, buddy.
Wow, so Haymitch did succeed in destroying the arena in the end. Haymitch is watching the clip of Lucy Gray singing. Wow, I did not expect to get a Lucy Gray appearance in this book. Oh my God. This book is just... It's getting harder and harder to read. So now we see that Mags and Wyrus have clearly been tortured, and Katniss thought she just had, gone insane from her games, and now we know that it was because of the Capitol torture from this incident. Okay, and now we just finally got to see the games as they were presented to Katniss, and I think what's really interesting here, besides, like I've already talked about, this sort of meta propaganda that is being done with the story, is that Haymitch did succeed. He was able to break the arena, but it didn't matter because nobody saw it. And it really shows the power that propaganda has over people. Obviously, not just propaganda on the Capitol side, but propaganda on the rebellion side, as we see in Mockingjay. It didn't matter that he completed his act of rebellion. It didn't matter that he succeeded at it because nobody saw it, and the rebels weren't able to use that action as a piece of propaganda to inspire others to act, to show them that they could overcome the Capitol. Back to the idea of implicit submission and its reliance on propaganda, that it doesn't matter what you do. It matters what people think.
The cheese of truth. Immigrants cause cancer.
Enjoy your homecoming. Now we're going to get to the really, really, really bad part. Well, since maybe we, were misled to believe certain things in the original story, maybe Suzanne Collins will write, oh, actually they all escaped into the woods and lived happily ever after. And it will totally subvert our expectations, like the rest of the book did. So... we knew that I can't do it.
Oh my God.
We knew I can't do it. You know, we knew that Haymitch's family was going to die. We knew that Lenore Dove was going to die. I just didn't expect it to be like that. The gumdrops and the fire and yeah. Lots of other details in here that I can't even remember now because I'm so distraught. But I think, you know, Lucy Gray's song being a funeral song sung by Burdick was really great insight. I don't know what to say. Forget this. Let's just go back. Okay, let me attempt to do some literary analysis here. You know, I don't know much about actually this poem, the Raven, probably because I never paid attention in English class. Kids these days with their chat GPT, back in my day, we had to go to Spark Notes, like cavemen. The Raven is a poem about a man who is heartbroken over the recent death of his beloved Lenore. A raven taps repeatedly on the door. He converses with the raven, and it only repeats nevermore, slowly descending into madness. He asks it if he and Lenore will be reunited in heaven. It says nevermore, and it ends with the narrator saying his soul will be lifted forever, or nevermore, like he will always be sad and in grief. We know that the poem is about grief, and it says here that Poe said the raven is a symbol of grief. And also, on a side note, this, Katniss's parents being like the last people to try to help Haymitch and him driving them away is, again, it's completely changed my perspective on Haymitch's relationship with Katniss. But I love how the poem is interspersed in. I think that's just such a beautiful device. Well, I mean, it's sad, but like a beautiful device to kind of show Haymitch's descent into madness, because the narrator of the poem is also like slowly descending into madness, and it's showing like Haymitch's descent into like viscerally. I'm gonna go back to the poem, but we also do get to see the grave of Lenore Dove, but also of Lucy Gray. I think some people might take this to mean that Lucy Gray has officially died, like that the snow in the Capitol caught up with her and killed her, and, you know, that's why she has a grave. I actually think because we have this this quote on the headstone, this quote from that song, yet some maintain to this day she's a living child, that you may see sweet Lucy Gray upon the lonesome wild. I think that alludes to the fact that they actually never found her. I think the grave was like symbolic of the fact that they lost her, but I think Lucy Gray is still in the wind. I think her fate is still unknown. We also see the Flint Striker return here. I think the Flint Striker is really cool symbolism. Honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head a little bit around Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes even. I feel like there's more Suzanne Collins was saying with that book that I was able to like fully comprehend. But I think it's interesting how the bird and the snake are connected at the bottom. Lucy Gray was the songbird, Snow was the snake, but then we see over time that there's like a little bit of both in each person. And I don't know, I'd actually love to hear your thoughts on the symbolism of the Flint Striker. Obviously, we have symbolism of it being able to spark fire, and Haymitch sort of being part of like sparking the fire. That was Katniss, that was the rebellion. But if you have any other insight into the symbolism on the Flint Striker, I would love to hear it. Okay. First of all, Plutarch says that BEETEE can't kill himself because his wife's pregnant. But we did not see a wife or a child when we met him in Catching Fire. So I can only assume that was BEETEE's punishment, that his wife and child were killed. Or, you know, if not for this, maybe there was another act of rebellion down the line. I don't know. I wouldn't love to know. I was like, I'd love to know. I don't know. I don't want to suffer anymore. You shook up the Capitol both figuratively and literally with that earthquake. You are capable of imagining a different future, and maybe it won't be realized today, maybe not in our lifetime, maybe it will take generations. We're all part of a continuum. Does that make it pointless? You need someone different from me. No, Haymitch, we need someone exactly like you. Just luckier. I say, luckier, or with better timing, having an army at their back wouldn't hurt. Wow. So again, going back to what I was saying earlier, this theme of this book that, you know, change doesn't necessarily happen in one lifetime, and you may never see the fruits of your labor related to rebellion. And I think that's a really depressing point, but a really important point that Suzanne Collins is making with this story.
It's a temporary setback. It's a momentary loss.
And I think that's a really interesting point, that Katniss and Katniss's era, they weren't able to bring about the rebellion for any other reason besides the fact that the timing was better and that they were luckier. Katniss was lucky that she had a game maker that was more interested in the spectacle of the games, in the entertainment, than he was trying to sell the propaganda. So going back to the Raven poem, again, I'd love to hear your interpretation of it, because I'm still sort of trying to get what Suzanne Collins is saying here. I think maybe it'll take me another reread, even though I really don't want to reread this book. Again, one of the best books I've ever read. I do not want to read it ever again. I think Snow is the Raven. I think, he's the Raven driving Haymitch mad, making it hard for him to differentiate what is real or not real, what's propaganda, what's truth. And he paralyzes Haymitch into being hopeless and not acting, not rebelling because of grief. And possibly I'm projecting my own feelings about the world onto this story. I definitely am. But I think it's really saying something here about how governments keeping their citizens in a state of grief and hopelessness in order to keep them powerless is an example of ruling by opinion, making it hard for us to distinguish what's real and what's not real, so we cannot be united. And so I think Snow as the Raven, keeping Haymitch in this state of grief, making him feel powerless, is how he maintains control by opinion. There's definitely, I think there's definitely more to this poem. I think maybe I should have paid attention in English class a little more, and I could have derived some more meaning from the inclusion of this poem, but alas, I did not. So any English majors out there, if you'd like to share your thoughts, please do. Oh, I'm at the epilogue. Oh! I first saw the girl at the hop when she was just a baby. Burdock was so proud of her. Oh my god. Tough and smart, her hair in 2 braids, reminding me for all the world of Louella McCoy, my sweetheart of old. And after she volunteered for the games, that nickname couldn't help but slip out. And oh my god. I didn't want to let them in, her and Peeta, but the walls of a person's heart are not impregnable, not if they have ever known love. That's what Lenore Dove says. Oh my gosh, and I didn't expect, Katniss herself to make an appearance, just, a very brief appearance, but she... Oh my god! Oh, wait, Oh! Oh! Oh my god! Why didn't I see this before? I am just now understand. I didn't think of it earlier, that the geese connection, when at the end of Mockingjay, she's like, Haymitch raises geese after, until when the alcohol is run out. I guess I should have understood that when they talked about Lenore Dove and her geese earlier in the story. I just never made that connection. And then with the symbolism, which, now I can see how, because before it felt so, I'm like, why geese? But now I understand what the symbolism of the goose in the common poem, that was sort of representative at the end there of the geese being given back the common, right?
Look at all those chickens!
I'm not sure I'll be here in the old there before much longer. My liver's dragged and I only try out when the train's late. I know one thing though, the Capitol can never take Lenore Dove from me again. They never really did in the first place. Nothing you can take from me was ever worth keeping. And she was the most precious thing I've ever known. When I tell her that, she always says, I love you like all fire. And I reply, I love you like all fire. As far as last lines go, I think this was the most emotionally okay one, which is great because this book was, I think, the worst one emotionally. Nothing anyone can take from you is worth keeping, and so they can't take your love for other people, your kindness, your compassion. Also, I really like the sort of idea here. Haymitch is talking about the memorial book, which we get a line in the epilogue of Mockingjay, I think, where Katniss mentions eventually Haymitch joins them in remembering the people that he's lost in the memorial book. And I like this idea. Haymitch says, I finally told our story. And I like the idea that this book, this story being told, is Haymitch at the end of Mockingjay, like finally telling that story. I think, again, it's very like meta sort of thing. Also, I looked at the acknowledgments, and the way that it ends is, she says, to my wonderful readers, thanks once again, returning to Panam and investing in these characters and their struggles, even when you know the eventual outcome. The snow may fall, but the sun also rises. I think that's really, yeah. So again, truly one of the best, books, but I want to call it like a piece of art, because that's what it is. It's truly one of the best that I've ever read. Will I ever read it again? Maybe someday. It's very, very difficult to read. But Suzanne Collins really does so well putting these big concepts into a story form in a way that connects with us emotionally and gets us to question. And The Hunger Games, in my opinion, are just books that are sort of the pinnacle of the importance of storytelling. Because if you come at someone with these ideas of implicit submission, of just war theory, it's not going to emotionally resonate or impact them in a way where a person might have a full grasp of it, and not even just a full understanding of it, but a full like emotional grasp on the significance of it and how it applies to their life and the world they experience. But when you do it through a story, through the lens of a fictional character, in a way where a reader can really emotionally connect to the story being told, that can see themselves in the story, that can ask themselves what they would have done in the story, it's a really effective way to get people thinking about how these ideas apply to their own life. And it's interesting because I feel like lately I've been sort of wondering, what does storytelling actually have an impact? Does it change anyone's perspective? Does it have the potential to change anyone's mind? I remember reading a study in college that was sort of talking about this idea that no matter whether you're more like a hero or a villain in the story, most people will still see themselves in the underdog. They'll see themselves in the hero. And most people will receive a story and will receive the message of the story to fit their already, the views and beliefs they already have, rather than changing their mind, even if the beliefs of the story are completely contrasting the beliefs that they hold. They'll interpret it to fit their own belief system and to fit what they already think about the world and their own opinions. So I have been kind of like disillusioned recently thinking about stories and wondering, what's the point? I think storytelling is a great way to get people to ask questions and to think and to change people's minds. But is anyone's minds ever even changed through storytelling? But I think what this book did so effectively was it really forces you to think about your perspective. By being a narrative that completely flips the script on the narrative presented to us in Catching Fire, it forces you to be like, oh wait, hang on, my perspective has been changed. Even if you didn't change it yourself, this book changes your perspective on the story. And I think it also does a really great job of giving you so many viewpoints of a lot of different characters in this, to the point where you probably can see yourself to some extent reflected in a lot of these different characters. So you're kind of forced to understand the story from all the different perspectives rather than just one. And on top of that, like I said, the story doesn't answer any questions. It asks you questions, which I think all these things combined, I don't know that someone would read this story and it would change their mind about anything, would change the way they view anything. But I think it was written in such a well-crafted way that it has the potential to do that more than any other story that I've ever read. And for that reason, I think this is the best Hunger Games book. Now, when it comes to just plot, when it comes to narrative and storytelling just related to the plot, I think Catching Fire is the best. When it comes to what the message of the story that most resonated with for me, I think that's Mockingjay. What the story was saying in Mockingjay resonated with me the most. But when it comes to storytelling as a whole, I think Sunrise on the Reaping is definitely the best Hunger Games book. And I think that also having, like I said, I don't know if Suzanne Collins had more free reign to be more overt with her messaging, to be a little bit more shocking and horrifying, and to say exactly what she wanted to say in this book, or if it's just the fact that this book was meant for an older audience because she knows her fan base is older now, but it feels more like she had the freedom to really say what exactly she wanted to say with this story. And I think that really came across. And so I would say that Sunrise on the Reaping, for all those reasons, is the best Hunger Games book. Everyone's like, oh, we want more. Give us more, Suzanne. More Hunger. No, God, please let me rest. I mean, do I want more because I think she has a lot of important stories to tell and I think the world could benefit from them? Sure, but I don't want to read anymore. I don't want to suffer anymore. Why do you guys want to suffer? I don't understand this.
I will go to the animal shelter and get you a kitty cat. I will let you fall in love with that kitty cat. And then on some dark, cold night, I will steal away into your home and punch you in the face.
Anyway, this is going to be an insanely long video. I don't think I've ever talked about a book as much as I've talked about this one. But if you're still here, if you've made it to the end, thank you. That's crazy. I really appreciate you. I'm glad you got to experience the terror of this with me. Thank you for being here. And like I said, I still feel like I will need a couple more reads that I might never do to fully wrap my head around what Suzanne Collins is saying with a lot of things in this book. So I'd love to hear your interpretations. I'd love to hear your analysis, because I think it will definitely, hearing your thoughts will give me insight on stuff that I missed. So I would love to hear it. But gosh, yeah, thanks for staying till the end of this insanely long video. You're amazing. I'm giving you a high five in the comments for us getting through that. And yeah, I don't know what to say now. I'm probably gonna, honestly, I'm probably still gonna be crying about this book in a few hours. So I'll go leave myself to my tears, and thank you for watching.